Hey everybody, it's GauntletX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we're going to be playing this week's Midweek Magic event, which will be a Wilds of Eldraine Phantom Sealed event. This is a free sealed event, but we will not be keeping any of the cards that we play with today. We'll just be getting some fun practice in with the format and getting a couple random rare rewards and a mystery cosmetic. So without further ado, let's hop into the event and see what we get to play with today. So here's a look at our rares, and we certainly want to try to play with the Realm Scorcher Hellkite as the strongest rare in the sealed pool, a 6 mana 4/6 flying haste with a bunch of extra text that lets you start shooting off your opponent's creatures for 1 damage apiece for only 2 mana. So really nice mana sink ability and just a giant flying game ender. So big fan of Realm Scorcher Hellkite, definitely the best rare. Second best is probably Lord Skitter. The efficiency and the mana cost of this is very nice. 3 mana for a 3/3 that gives you another rat token at the beginning of combat on your turn every turn. So 3 mana for a 3/3 and a 1/1 rat, and if it sticks around you just keep getting more and more rats. Really nice card there. Third best, probably Archon of the Wild Rose. If we have some roll tokens to put on our board, we can start turning all of our creatures into 4/4s with Flyer, and that's their base stats. So they'll also get the buff from the roll token. So most rolls give +1/+1, so this is likely making anything with a roll token on it a 5/5 flyer, which is pretty nuts. And after that, there's a pretty significant drop off where we have Defense of the Heart in the right matchup where our opponent has 3 or more creatures. This can be absolutely explosive, finding our best 2 creatures and putting them onto the battlefield for free, but it is a bit narrow, where if our opponent doesn't have enough creatures, it's going to do absolutely nothing. Then we have Rowan, that's basically just a good creature for the cost, no other ability, just a 3 mana 4/2 menace. And then Imodane, the Pyro Hammer, basically just a 4 mana 4/4. There's not a ton of ways to get a bunch of extra damage in off of Imodane. And in Sealed, we obviously have no control over how many burn spells we got to trigger Imodane's ability, so that probably doesn't do too much. And our last 2 rares are the ones that I would say are basically unplayable. Polluted Bonds is just way too slow. By the time that you already have 5 mana, if your opponent is really that scared of taking that life loss and getting drained, they can just stop playing lands at that point because they probably already have 5 or 6 mana, which is enough for most of what they're going to need anyway. And then Virtue of Knowledge here is a very fun card to build around with in Commander and just constructed formats in general, but pretty expensive for a 1/1 limited format. So very nice sealed pool overall. I'm a really big fan of the red and black rares, and hopefully we can do something there. But let's take a look at our colorless cards and our multicolored cards, see if there's anything pushing us into a specific color pair outside of our rares and mythics, and see if we've got some good fixing. And it looks like we do have some great fixing out of the colorless. We have an Evolving Wilds, 2 copies of Prophetic Prism, and 2 copies of Scarecrow Guide, so we can certainly do some splashing around. Maybe play around with the Defense of the Heart just because it's a fun card, and then we get to splash in like Gingerbread Hunter here, which we can always cast if black is a main color in our deck. We can always Puny Snack, and then just hit that green source off the splash to drop the 5 mana 5/5 later, so that could be pretty cool. Yeah, with the Evolving Wilds, the Double Prism, the Scarecrow Guide to help do it, that could be pretty legit, because again, our best rares are overlapping in black-red, and we also get a Rowan in that color pair, so maybe black-red splash green could be a thing with this fixing. Also got an Ash Party Crasher for our other multicolored card, but don't think we go red-white. I mean, we've got some great red, obviously, with those rares and stuff, and some really aggro stuff. 3 1-mana 2/1s in red. So I guess if our white commons and uncommons are better than our black commons and uncommons, we could go red-white instead of red-black, and then we just don't get to play Lord Skitter. We just play some good streamlined aggro instead, with an Archon of the Wild Rose at the top and an Ash on turn 2. So probably like red-black splash green grindy stuff, or just pure red-white aggro is where it's going to be. Let's take a look at each color individually though. And the quickest, easiest way to do that, if you've never used the deck builder too much in Sealed, is to go T semicolon CR, or that's just a full-on colon, T colon CR. That's going to sort your cards by creatures and non-creatures, and then just click on the color you want, and it'll put every card in that color into your deck. So this is a really quick, really easy way to see what we have access to in every color in the sealed pool, one by one, and try to pair them up based on power level in our heads here. So this is a really simple way to visualize it. It'll show it all the way through the mana curve, and it'll sort our non-creatures outside of that curve of creatures, because we're not always playing a Cooped Up on turn 2, we're not playing a Return Triumphant on turn 2. This is a later game removal spell, this is late game graveyard recursion, so we want to see our curve of creatures and see our removal spells, combat tricks, stuff like that separately. So that is the really easy way to look at things in the deck builder. And our white does look pretty dang solid, honestly. I would not be opposed to a red-white deck here. The triple keep guard is a little weird. We don't have a ton of enchantments here, but in sealed, most players are going to be playing a bit of a slower game plan. You can't consistently get super aggressive curves. So if we go red-white and we have enough 1-2 mana cards, we definitely have really aggressive cards like Ash. We've got great cheap removal like triple Cooped Up. We could run 1-drops in here just so that we're getting underneath all of our opponent's plays. When they're trying to start things off on like turn 3 and curve up from there into some really big stuff, we'll just start slamming things onto the board from the moment the game starts and try to be super aggressive. So while Keep Guard isn't that impressive, just the fact that we have some 1-mana creatures, we have some 2-mana creatures, means that we could be doing some aggressive curve stuff, which is nice. And we do have some actually pretty impressive cards here. We've got, again, the triple Cooped Up. The Hopeful Vigil is an excellent way to trigger Celebration, which means that we have 2 non-land permanents hit the board in 1 turn, so it's an excellent card to go with our Ash. And we, of course, have that Archon. We don't have many roles to go with the Archon out of white. We only have the Frostbridge Guard getting a, or not Frostbridge Guard, the Unassuming Sage getting a sorcery roll onto itself, or the Clothier putting a royal roll onto something, or the Return Triumphant getting a Young Hero roll onto something. So that's 3 total roll cards. It's actually not horrible for just one of our colors, so if our red has a few Young Hero rolls and Wicked rolls as well, then that could really pop off as well and be a massive finisher. So white actually looking pretty sweet here. Checking out our blue now. Blue also looks pretty powerful. I think it's unlikely that we're going to play blue because it's not going to give us any of our bombs. It's not going to give us our Archon. It's not going to give us our gigantic red dragon, anything like that. But honestly, this is not a terrible blue sealed pool. The curve of creatures isn't great, but we have a Hatching Plans. So if we can pair this with a color with a lot of bargain, we can sacrifice the Hatching Plans and make this just 2 mana draw 3, which is pretty wild. We've got the Ice Out to bargain it away, so that's a great counterspell when you have something like Hatching Plans in your deck. We have the Johann Stopgap to try to bargain away the Hatching Plans, and we have 2 Diminisher Witches to do so as well. So even just in blue, we have kind of the Hatching Plans combo set up with 4 different ways to bargain it away. Not as many as you would want. We definitely want a second color with more bargain as well, but enough that it would be playable if a secondary color does have some synergy with it as well, and that can really be worth it because that's so much card draw for such a cheap mana investment there. Plus, all these bargain cards are good. The Stopgap, 2 mana to bounce an on-land permanent and draw a card is a great tempo play. Ice Out, 2 mana to counter something is really good if you're bargaining with it. Diminisher Witches are great against just big green creatures. Slapping a Cursed roll onto them, turning their Hamlet Gluttons into 1/1s. So pretty nice little bargain package with the Hatching Plans, and there is like a Threadbind click here for a 2-for-1 removal spell and creature all in one if we get a little bit of splashing in here, which we can easily do with prisms and scarecrows and stuff like that for that white, even if we aren't blue-white. So blue actually looks pretty good, but again, don't think blue's that likely because we have powerful rares in basically every color except for blue. We've got like Lord Skitter out of black, we've got our Archon in white, we've got our Dragon in red, we've got a Defense of the Heart that would be more fun than guaranteed powerful, but still a cool reason to be in green as well. So don't think that blue gets to make the cut, even though the commons and uncommons are pretty good. Looking at the black now, we're definitely not playing that Polluted Bonds, as I said before. And here's the one awkward part about using this. If you cut something from the deck, then you can't click the button again to make it all disappear. So I was trying to just drag polluted bonds over. So that's one thing you have to do if you're trying to use the fancy clicking on the color thing. For cards you want to cut, just scooch them to the side. Don't actually click on them to cut them, or the button's not going to work anymore, and the black will not disappear when you click on the black symbol. So, all right, back into this. We're not going to be playing an ego drain. We've got a pretty low fairy count, and even when you have a lot, it's basically a Thoughtseize that you can't play till much later in the game, and part of what's so good about Thoughtseize is just playing it turn 1. Feed the Cauldron's great interaction. Well, it's solid interaction. Candy Grapple and Witch's Vanity are great interaction. We've got a Stab Wound for good removal in aggro decks. Fairy Fencing. We've got 2 on-color fairies that we'll play because I don't think we want to play Stingblade Assassins, although these do work with rat tokens from like Lord Skitter. We get to make some trump attacks and then finish something off with a Stingblade. I just don't like, there's a lot of good X1 removal in the format, like -1/-1 spells and 1 damage kind of spells. So not a big fan of a 4-mana card with only 1 toughness. Not a huge fan of the Tabby either. These are all the cards that I would just like 100% play. Maybe if we have multiple 5-drops in our other color, we don't play the Scream Puff, but I think it is solid at the top end. So not a high quantity of cards in black, but I do like the card quality, especially Candy Grapple, Witch's Vanity, Lord Skitter, and High Fae Negotiator. I think all those are incredible. So black has some pretty high card quality. Not a ton of cards, though. Looking at the red, this looks like it's just 100% in the deck. I'm not going to be playing the dirty little Kindled Heroism combat trick. Probably won't be playing the Frantic Firebolt, because if I'm red-black or I'm red-white, I will just have better removal spells. I'll have Cooped Ups in the deck, or I'll have Candy Grapples and Witch's Vanities, to where we don't need to try to dump a bunch of instants and sorceries in our grave to get the Firebolt to kill something. So I think we're cutting those. And it's about it. I mean, Daredevil's a little more on the borderline, Ibidane's a little on the borderline, but they're all perfectly playable, and we have some really good cards like 3 Embereth Veteran, a Ratcatcher Trainee, and a Grand Ball Guest to curve out well. We've got the Edgewall Pack to trigger Celebration and get a wide board state, and we of course have the incredible Realm Scorcher Hellkite, so red looks like an absolute banger of a color. That is fantastic stuff out of red. And looking at green now, we've got that Gingerbread Hunter, which would be a pretty powerful splash. Got a Root Rider Fawn for some ramp. We've got a Hamlet Glutton at the top of the curve, which is a nice way to stabilize. Green looks perfectly reasonable as well, but it does look weaker than our red and our white. I think it's a little weaker than our black as well. The quantity of cards in green is a lot higher, but there's a lot of these cards I'd rather not play, like Spider Food. I don't want a main deck, Bestial Bloodline, Outriders, Tempest Heart. Pretty comparable to our black at best, I would say. I think it would be better, again, to just be like red-black splash green. Although if we go red-green splash black, then we do get a Root Rider Fawn to help splash things in, but that's the only green piece of fixing we have, so our mana base doesn't get that much better playing green at the core than it does playing black at the core. So I think the main things we really want to look at here are red, white, and just play a streamlined 2-color aggro deck, or red-black splash the green for a little bit more power in the grand scheme of things. So did we get any rolls out of our red to make the Clothier a little better? Or the Archon a little better? We did. We have 3 Embereth Veterans, which can make young hero rolls. We also have a Cut-In, which can make a young hero roll. So we got 4 more ways to get a roll onto the board to go with the Archon of the Wild Rose, which is pretty insane. That's also enough young hero rolls that Gingerbrute starts looking really appealing, where you can have this be an unblockable creature that, thanks to that young hero roll, keeps getting a +1/+1 counter every time it attacks until it has 4 toughness total. Then it will not get any more counters, so you can buff it all the way up to like a 4 for unblockable threat. So I really like the Gingerbrute on curve, and honestly, because of that going on, we could cut the Keep Guards, because that's still 5 1-drops, which is so much for an aggro deck and sealed. That is so much more than players will generally have. Since we won't be splashing here, we will not be playing the Scarecrow Guide, the Prophetic Prisms, I think the only colorless cards we're interested in for the red-white deck are the 2 Ginger Brutes. For 2 mana cards, we'll definitely play the high power Armory Mice. Frostbridge Guard's a bit dirtily, a bit expensive to toy around with in an aggro deck, but I think we'll play all the other like 2 mana 2/2s just to keep that creature count nice and high. Definitely play 3 Cooped Up. We will certainly play a Hopeful Vigil. And we need to put the multicolored cards in. We need to play Ash Party Crasher in here. Then we are definitely playing Return Triumphant as well because it's excellent with our 2 Ginger Brutes and really just solid with any of the other many 1, 2, or 3 mana creatures. At 3 mana we have Acolyte, which a 3 mana 2/2 is not really what you want in terms of stat line in an aggro deck, but the fact that it gives us that card advantage, drawing us a card when it hits the board, makes it a perfectly reasonable inclusion even in a more aggressive strategy. Definitely will keep the Daredevil in though, that high power nice and early. Cut the Firebolt. We've got enough non-creature spells here. I think we want just a really threat-dense kind of deck here with just tons and tons of creatures, tons of cards that are pushing in damage. So I don't think we really need all these non-creature spells to where I can cut like a Moment of Valor. Just go triple Cooped Up and cut in for the bigger creatures and flick a coin for the small ones. And then we've got Archon, Edgewall Pack. Imodane looks pretty weak here, mainly a 4 mana 4/4. We've got 3 cards that work with the Imodane. Technically, Imodane, I think, does... No, it's only instant sorcery spells. Okay. So yeah, Imodane only works with the 2 flick a coin and the cut. And I was going to say, if Imodane just said non-creature damage, period, then she would work with Realm Scorcher Hellkite. But if we have a Realm Scorcher Hellkite on the board, we're already winning anyway. We don't need to put a card in just because it combos with the Hellkite. And Imodane doesn't. Imodane only works with instants or sorceries anyway, so that makes that even easier to choose there. So I think this would be the deck here. Would this get it down to a 40-card deck? I mean, this just looks like a solid draft deck right here. Yeah, this gets it down to 42 cards. This looks pretty great here, the Boros aggro pile. So we're going to narrow this down to 40 cards, and then we are going to save the deck, leave the deck builder, and hop back in to build that Jund deck. So if we decide that the Boros deck is better, then I don't have to completely rebuild it again. I can just exit the deck builder without saving. So 42 cards right now. 2 cuts to go. We've got a Hopeful Vigil adding to the creature count, so it's at essentially 18 here. I like that. Really high creature count for the deck. Technically, Return Triumphant is also like bringing back a creature, so sort of adding to the threats in the deck. So we could really cut creatures or non-creatures here and be around that 17 count, which is pretty solid. Might cut some of the high mana value stuff, just like a Clothier. Hellkite is really expensive, but really worth it. So I'll run the Hellkite, but maybe cut the Clothier. Could cut 1 land here. The only card that we have that needs more than 4 mana is Realm Scorcher Hellkite, and we have 2 Flick a Coin. Maybe if we're lucky, we just leave those treasure tokens behind for if we draw a Hellkite later. Most of our deck's pretty low curve. Looking at that average cost, it's at 2.5 here. I think we can cut a land and a Clothier, call it good there. But I like that Clothier adds a role to the deck to go with the Archon, but again, the mana cost is pretty high. We have enough 1s and 2s that Sage is mainly being treated as a 4, where it's just not that exciting. We could cut Sage instead. Like for 1 more mana, instead of getting a 4 mana 3/3, spending 1 more mana, we get a 5 mana 3/3 with flying that puts a roll on something else. I think that's a pretty big buff to the Sage that's worth the extra mana to make Clothier a little better than Sage. The only thing that makes Sage a little interesting is the fact that it's flexible, so we can drop it on turn 2, but then we're dropping it as just a 2 mana 2/2 no text, and I think in the average game we'll have better things to do at that point, right? Because we have 5 1 mana creatures, and we have 6 2 mana creatures. Most games we should have something better to do than Sage at turn 2, and honestly on turn 4, even if it's just playing 2 more cheap spells like a 3-drop and a 1-drop, or a 1-drop and a 2-drop. We'll just have better stuff to do with our mana than that. But the Clothier could be pretty legit at the top of the curve. So I'll go for the Clothier over that Sorcerer Roll card. And 13 red cards, 10 white, got 1 plains, which looks pretty perfect to me. There's definitely a little bit of an argument for cutting Evolving Wilds, because in aggro decks, if you hit a tap land at any point, that can stop you from curving out perfectly. But we don't have a ton of 3 or 4 mana cards, so I think Evolving Wilds should fit in fine and still help us hit double white or double red, depending on what's going on in our hand. So I'm still going to keep it in here. But if you have like the perfect curve, and you're gonna be going 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop every game, and Evolving Wilds kind of ruins that in your hand, because then you have to take a turn off from playing your most expensive card. Instead of getting to go 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, you have to go 1-drop, 2-drop, crack an Evolving Wilds and play another 2-drop, and then play a card for the full mana value. But I think we can do that because we have so much at 2 mana, so much at 1 mana, that yeah, we can reliably be cracking the Evolving Wilds turn 3 or 4 and not really getting punished for it. So that should be just a strict improvement to our mana base most games, so we'll run that. And I like the more mountains than plains, not only because there's just more red spells than white spells, but looking at the way that our curve is here, we have a lot of red spells at 2 mana or less. So you want to have more sources of the color that you need early to make it more likely that you have it in your opening hand. If you have a lot of spells in a secondary color, but they're all like really high up on your curve, you can run a lower amount of those lands because you don't need to draw them till later, statistically speaking. And we've got a little bit of that going on where we want a red source turn 1 pretty consistently with 3 1-mana red spells, but we have 0 1-mana white spells, and we only have 3 2-mana white spells, because again, we're never going to play a cooped up on turn 2. We're always going to be playing that later once our opponent has resolved good threats. Very few 2-mana cards we're just going to immediately cooped up. So it's realistically just 3 white cards at 2 mana and 4 red ones. So if you look up the curve, 1 to 2 mana, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 red cards and 3 white cards. It's a pretty vast difference. So 1 more mountain to plains. It's very good to me for a multitude of reasons. And this would be the Boros deck, so we'll go ahead and save it right there. That looks pretty excellent, honestly. I think it would be really hard to convince me not to play this, because this just looks like a good Boros aggro deck for draft, which means that in Sealed, where decks are generally going to be a little slower, this should be able to steamroll some decks. So really, really liking this. It's going to be hard to get pushed off this, but we will certainly take a look at the Jund pile. I'm sure it'll be fun to consider. And since this is a midweek Magic event, then it doesn't really matter. We can play infinitely. If it takes me 100 games to get my 3 wins, that's fine. I can still play 100 games, you know, and not get punished at all. We might play both of the decks, just so we can play around with both of them and play with a wider variety of cards. But I think the Boros deck is definitely the better deck. If this were a competitive event, if this were an Arena Open best of 1 day 1 event, I'd probably just do the Boros deck. But could be fun to get some variety in here. Let's see. We do want the colorless fixing cards in here. We want the Prisms, the Scarecrow Guides. Candy Trail can be alright in your slower decks. There's a little bit of card selection, card draw going on. So we could maybe run that in here. And I'm just cutting a lot of the cards that I already said I would probably cut. Like the Fairy Thoughtseize, the Fairy Removal spell, stuff like that. 18 creatures, 11 non-creatures. That's a little high. Maybe we don't play the Candy Trail. We do have 2 cantrips with Prophetic Prism. Those are cards that just hit the board and draw you another card immediately, just replace themselves immediately. That is what cantrip means in the lingo. I think we've got enough 5s and 6s to drop a Scream Puff. Not enough fairies for Barrow Naughty to be exciting. Not enough enchantments really for the Tabby. Yeah, this looks cute. Boros definitely looks better. Being able to Defense of the Heart, if we're lucky, for a Gingerbread Hunter and a Realm Scorcher is so funny. So funny. Mainly just for a Realm Scorcher Hellkite. So, I might, you know, get my first 2 wins with Boros and then just play this Jund deck just so we can try to Defense of the Heart into a Realm Scorcher one time for our 3rd win. Get super lucky on that one. That could be so fun. If our opponent has like a little bit of a rat deck or just an aggro deck in general, they get 3 creatures on board, just slam this thing down, pick up a Realm Scorcher Hellkite and go. Super, super fun. But yeah, as you can see, the curve's a lot worse. The removal isn't incredible in here. We've got the grapple, the feed, the vanity. Like, we've got good removal, but you do want really, really good stuff when you're trying to be a slower, grindier deck. I don't think it quite hits that level. Our red cards look so much better in aggressive decks than grindier mid-rangey decks like this one, where the veterans look significantly worse in this deck than they do in the Boros deck, because we're getting so much value out of getting early damage in the other deck. And once these are no longer big enough to attack into our opponent's threats, the young hero rolls do a lot more in the Boros deck than the Jund deck, because we have unblockable creatures like Gingerboots to put them on, and we also have cards like the Archon that care about just having enchantments on the board. So there's a lot of cards that get weaker in this deck where they have less synergy with this pile of cards than they did with our Boros pile of cards. So yeah, for a multitude of reasons like that, we are gonna stick to the Boros deck. We maybe don't even want triple veteran in this one. I'm just going to finish this one off so that if I do want to try out, yeah, we'll just go to like 1 veteran here and play a slower build. I'm finishing it off so I can take a screen cap of it real quick. So if I do want to try to Defense of the Heart into a Realm Scorcher Hellkite, we can swap to this deck for round 3 without having to completely rebuild it. So we print screen, take a final snap of this one, but we will be rolling with that Boros build. Alright, and here's a look at the final deck list for today. We're on a Boros aggro deck, and this looks like a streamlined enough aggro deck that it could very easily be a draft deck, but we're in a sealed event here, which means we're really going to take advantage of the general slower curves that are available to people in their sealed pools. The fact that players aren't going to always have 1 2-mana cards, 1 2-mana removal, means we'll get a lot of extra damage in and a lot of mileage off of our several 1 and 2 mana creatures like Emberth, Veterans, Gingerbrutes, Ashes, Ratcatcher Trainees, Grand Ball Guests, and so on. We are doing all of the great simple Boros aggro stuff in the format of just jamming out with creatures and then clearing a path with Cooped Ups and Cut-ins, finish things off with a big Realm Scorcher Hellkite bomb, but we also have a lot of nice little micro synergies in the deck that could be pretty explosive in the right hands. We've of course got 2 Gingerbrutes that are excellent when you can put a young hero roll onto them because they can give themselves unblockability. So we have 3 veterans, a Return Triumphant, and a Cut-in to put young hero rolls on the board. Maybe get one on a Gingerbrute and get a bunch of extra damage in there. And also with all these roll tokens flying around, we've got an Archon of the Wild Rose that's going to make anything with a roll token on it base power and toughness 4/4 and flying, which means that if it's one of the sorcerer rolls or wicked rolls or something, then that creature is going to become a 5/5 flyer. But if it's in our deck where pretty much all of our rolls are young hero rolls, depending on how long our creature's been able to attack with that young hero roll on it, if it's gotten 2 or 3 +1/+1 counters on it, it could be a 6/6 or 7/7 flyer once the Archon of the Wild Rose hits the board. So that's another huge bomb, not just the Realm Scorcher Hellkite there. So lots of really sweet stuff going on in this deck, and I'm pretty excited to see how it does. So without further ado, let's head into the gameplay. Here we are for game 1 with an excellent mana curve. We're on the draw, so we won't be the most aggressive ever. Our opponent will be able to play like 3 mana cards to block while we're still playing 2 drops. But I think this hand is more than powerful enough to still get the aggressive lead pretty early. We get to drop an Ash down on turn 2 and try to beat them down with that. On turn 3, we can immediately trigger Ash's Celebration, so they'll get a +1/+1 counter when they attack. Thanks to our Ratcatcher trainee with the pest problem. And then turn 4, if they establish a good blocker, we can cut in, get some more power onto the board with that Young Hero roll. We've got a combat trick in the hand with a Ride the Rails too. Just got a lot of great stuff going on. So we'll start things off here with the pest problem so that Ash attacks in as a 3/3 into their 2/3 Tanglespan Lookout. And that is probably going to be 5 damage nice and early from Ash here, and it certainly is. Our opponent's already down to 15. They've got a great card draw engine down with the Tanglespan Lookout, so if they're playing any roll tokens, they'll be drawing a card every time one of those hits the board. There are a few just straight up auras in the format as well, but this is the easiest to trigger off of those roll tokens because a lot of cards will hit the board and do something while also making a roll token, just as an added little bonus. So they drop an Edgewall pack now. Our opponent is at 15 right now, so if I do cut in the Edgewall pack and put a Young Hero roll onto a rat, we're putting them down to 9. Actually, not even 9. Putting them down to... Wait. No, I'm correct. Putting them down to 9, which is pretty good. But we've got the Minecart Daredevil for Ride the Rails, so if they try to kill Ash here, we can ruin that with a combat trick. I think... With the Ride the Rails in hand, I think I just jam in. And then even if they block a rat, we can just buff a rat up to 3 power to kill their Edgewall pack as well. And this way I get to save the cut-in for their next blocker that might matter. Play a Grand Ball Guest here. It has the potential to attack for more power than the Ratcatcher trainee if we trigger Celebration. So we'll play that over the Ratcatcher. And there's a Witch's Vanity, which is really nice for our opponent. That's going to blow up our Ash and give them a food token to give them a little bit of breathing room. And then also give them a Wicked Roll, which would draw them a card with the Tanglespan Lookout there. I'm going to block the rat here, because if they want to spend a Monstrous Rage to kill a Grand Ball Guest, that's pretty fine with me. And they do want to spend a Monstrous Rage to do that. So Monstrous Rage is now gone. We can cut in the Lookout so they don't draw a card off the Wicked Roll or any other rolls they might be producing. And play a Veteran in the same turn. Seems good to me. Nice clear board again. We have 2 2-power creatures still to beat down with, but they have a lot of cards in their hand to try to stabilize with. Hamlet Glutton would be quite bad for me. That would be a 5-mana 6/6 that gains them 3 life when it hits the board. Be very hard to get around. And there it is. Well, they've got an excellent sealed pool as well. All high quality stuff from our opponents so far. So Return Triumphant's pretty awesome. So I can Return Triumphant on an Ash. An Ash immediately attacks as a 4/4, because Celebration will have been triggered. The Young Hero roll will trigger as well. So then they'd block the 4/4, take 5 damage, go to 7. And then we just play like a Daredevil as well this turn. Just try to go wide around the Hamlet Glutton to find the kill. I think that is reasonable. And we're threatening another Minecart Daredevil style combat trick where they might kill a smaller creature, which would just be straight upside for me if they don't choose to kill Ash here. But I imagine they will. Just kill Ash, take 5. And that is the play. Kill Ash, take 5. They're down to 7, and let's drop a Daredevil. So they're down to 7, and if I hit them with any 2 creatures, they're dead here. But they've still got 4 cards in hand. I think they missed a land drop, so I think it's 4 non-land cards, but I don't know. We're still early enough in the game that maybe neither of us has missed a land drop yet. But yeah, theoretically, if they didn't play a creature here, they'd just be dead. And Up the Beanstalk is not a creature. Because yeah, they could block Daredevil and take 6 from these and then flick a coin for the last 1 point of damage. That would be how we lethal them. Stingblade Assassin. So I can't kill them, but I can put them to 6 now. Because now I have to flick a coin the Assassin, but in flicking the Assassin, they block and kill a rat or a Daredevil and take 6, go to 1 life. Embereth Veteran does kill them, because now I get to put a Young Hero roll onto the other Veteran, and that is 7 damage no matter how they block. So excellent draw off of the rat out, and that's going to close out game 1, starting this Midweek Magic event off 1-0, and it's time to see what our random rare reward will be. The first random rare reward is a random rare from Phyrexia All Will Be One, which is just straight up gems. I don't remember exactly how they do the Midweek Magic rewards, but some of them I think it's like standard only rares, and then some others they do historic. I have like a full playset of basically every rare in standard outside of the Wilds of Eldraine ones, because I just complete the whole set while drafting basically, but Wilds of Eldraine season is not over yet, so I don't have all those. So we could get some random rares from Wilds of Eldraine, but if we get some from other sets, it's just going to be some more gems, but I'm always happy to have more gems to play some more drafts. So solid way to start it off, see how things go in game number 2. Here we are for game 2 with a pretty excellent curve. Gingerbrute into Ballgest into Daredevil. We are on the draw again. Hoping for no rat out from our opponent's black deck. That's a 1 mana instant to give something -1/-1 and create a rat token. Very nice card in the format. Do I want to coop up a Minstrosity? I don't think so. I think trading a 1-drop into the 2-drop is fine, even if they leave a food token behind. And they agree. They think it would be a trade in my favor, so they're not going to block with Minstrosity. Turn 3 for our opponent. Do they want to blow up our Grand Ballgest? They're definitely eyeballing it. Maybe just trying to decide if attacking into the guest is worth it or not. But maybe figuring out how they want to use removal. Alright, they're just going to shut off the block so I do not have the option to trade, which is pretty fine with me. Let's play a couple permanents this turn. Let's play a Gingerbrute and an Embereth Veteran. And honestly, this is probably a bad idea, but I really like Young Hero rolls on Gingerbrutes, so I'm just going to instantly sack the Embereth Veteran, get 1 extra damage in this turn, and then that'll make it so Gingerbrute has 2 counters on it on the next attack if they don't have a Candy Grapple or a Torch the Tower, any of these common, cheap removal spells to kill our Gingerbrute with. And they don't. It's a Merry Bards. We're just going to keep attacking past each other. Racing hardcore. But I think our deck is going to be superior at racing here. And I actually lied. They did not attack this turn. They have decided that it is worth holding the blocks back. I can't trigger Celebration this turn. So we probably just play an Acolyte and hit them with the Young Hero Gingerbrute. So let's play the Acolyte first. We only have red cards when it comes to 1 mana spells in the deck, so let's hold 1 red source up, and there is 1. Is it worth dropping the Veteran and sending the squad in? Or do we just get an unblockable Gingerbrute in? If I drop the Veteran, it's a 3/3 trample on attacks. It's already good enough to attack into these 2, technically. I actually don't think we need to trigger Celebration this turn. We can actually just do this. I guess I can't do the Gingerbrute, because then they trade Monstrosity into Ballgest, and Bards kills Gingerbrute without dying. But yeah, we can send the Grand Ballgest in here alongside our Gingerbrute. And then next turn we can Embereth Veteran to put a Young Hero roll onto the other Gingerbrute, and that'll be pretty sweet. Alright, so we clear another blocker out of the way. There goes their Monstrosity, which they do get a food token by trading it off, but that's going to soak up 2 of their mana if they want to eat that food and gain 3. So I'm usually not worried about giving them a food token to trading into something like Monstrosity, because if they spend 2 mana to gain 3 off the food token, that's 2 mana that can't be spent playing more blockers or something to prevent damage that way. Because when you think about it, 2 mana, sack it, gain 3, it's another 3 life, but 2 mana play a 2/2, like that just blocks a 2/2 or a 3/3, that's a gain 3 right there. Especially if it trades in, then it kind of like gains more than 3. So we have 3, 4, 5, 6 power on board. We can lethal them if I play the Veteran. Put a Young Hero roll onto anybody, doesn't matter which. Attack with all for 7. And buff that 7 up to 9 with Minecart Daredevil. And that is just another game with some lethal out of nowhere, and we are 2-0 in the event. Time to see if we get a random Wilds of Eldraine rare, or just some more gems. The rare reward is more gems from Phyrexia, all will be won. What's with all the Phyrexia rares today? Alright, one more win to go. I think it is safe to say that this red-white Boros aggro deck here is just phenomenal. Definitely where to be with this sealed pool, but I would like to do something a little cheeky, a little fun here. So let's see if we can't play that Jund deck and get Defense of the Heart to trigger, get our Hellkite out for free. That would be a lot of fun, because we haven't gotten to play the Hellkite a single time. So let's rebuild that Jund deck real quick. And here's a look at our quick pivot to the Jund deck. It's basically just red-black aggro, because all our best red cards are nice little aggro dorks here. But we have that green splash for the Defense of the Heart to try to pull out Realm Scorcher, Hellkite, and a Gingerbread Hunter, a High Fey Negotiator, something like that. The splash also gives us the Gingerbread Hunter, where we can always use Puny Snack as cheap removal, but sometimes we'll hit the green source and also drop out a Gingerbread Hunter turn 5 at the top of the curve, which is nice and powerful there as well. So just some really nice stuff here as well to play around with a little bit. Again, I think the Boros deck's a little more consistent, but this pile still looks pretty good, and it's definitely very fun to try to get the Defense of the Heart trigger one time, because that would be absolutely hilarious. So we'll see how this plays out for us as we head into game number 3, just looking for our final win. Alright, here we are on the play with a super keepable hand. Just looking like a Rakdos aggro deck in this hand, but a very good one at that. Turn 1 Gingerbrute from our opponent on the play here. Nice aggressive start for them. We're going to start with a Grand Ballgest, because our Lord Skitter will trigger Celebration on turn 3 to get this attacking as a 3/3 trampler. And there's a Beanstalk Worm's Adventure to let them ramp up, play an additional land this turn. And the Brave the Wilds to find another land. Grab their Swamp for their second color, so they are green-black. Let's cast that Lord Skitter, get a Celebration attack in with Trample. And of course get a wide board state nice and quickly, even if they immediately kill Lord Skitter with some kind of black removal spell. We still have this rat token left behind, and that is a balmy deck from our opponent. Virtue of Persistence is the play here. They're going to give us some competition for our Lord Skitter and our potential Mythic Rare Dragon if we ever have that, because Virtue of Persistence, great bomb. The Sorcery Adventure alone is a fantastic reason to play the card. 2 mana to give something -3/-3 and gain a couple life is a super efficient removal spell. And then it also just pivots into a win condition at 7 mana, where you're going to start bringing back everything from all graves to your board once per turn. Just all the creatures, either player's grave. Really excellent card. So we have our +2/+1 combat trick to trade up into the Beanstalk Worm, and that'll work with Grand Ballgast or Edgewall Pack here, so we can attack with those. The rats can't really get in well. So I've got the mana to play the combat trick and cast the Daredevil. I could feed the Cauldron the Oof and still have the mana for the combat trick. That way they can't threaten to kill the Grand Ballgast without blocking with Beanstalk Worm. I think that's reasonable to me, because this also makes it so if they want to block Edgewall Pack, they have to double block that, and if they do double block that, you know what, I'll sack a rat here too. If they do double block Edgewall Pack, then by buffing it up to 5 power, we'll kill both their creatures, and that's beautiful work from our Ride the Rails trick. And the reason we're attacking with these rats here is because attacking with a 2/2 and a 3/3 menace makes it really unlikely that our opponent wants to just block a rat with the 5/4, and their other block would just be trading into a rat token, which is super fine with us. Oh, we found the Defense of the Heart, but it's probably not happening this game. To the point where, honestly, strictly trying to win, the play is to play the Daredevil, play the Boundary Lands Ranger, and discard the Defense of the Heart to draw something immediately relevant. But I'm not going to do that. Just on the off chance that we can do Defense of the Heart stuff later. And that's 2 creatures on their board. They only need 1 more creature. If their last card in hand's another creature, alright, if we find a green source, we can do Defense of the Heart stuff. They just have to have 3 creatures on board, doesn't matter how many I have. The issue with this is it's going to make it so I don't want to trade. Oh my god, okay, okay, alright, here we go. We Evolving Wilds for a forest, and play Defense of the Heart next turn. I was going to say the issue here is that now, if they attack with Galefang, I don't want to like double block and trade. But if they play a 4th creature, I do. Alright, they still need to draw 1 more land to cast their Virtue of Persistence. So it's going to be a Balm War. It's going to be Defense of the Heart versus Virtue of Persistence here. 100%. So here's Defense of the Heart. Actually, they'll still have 3 creatures out if I flick a coin the Scarecrow Guide, and that'll make it so they need to draw specifically a swamp if they want to cast the Virtue. So we'll do that, but now I can't afford to block anybody next turn if they attack in, or my Defense of the Heart won't trigger. Come on. Let's live the dream. Let's live the dream. If Defense of the Heart triggers, I think they die in just 1 attack. Ooh, they redrew a Scarecrow Guide, so that's definitely good for them. And here we go. We grab a Realm Scorcher Hellkite and probably High Fae Negotiator, and that might just kill them immediately because of the haste. Oh, we can't bargain it? We can only bargain when we cast. Okay, so I can't do the extra damage from the Negotiator. Okay, so Scarecrow Guide is their only blocker for flyers. I can shoot that with a cut-in. Or shoot that with a Hellkite, not a cut-in. And then I can cut in something else. They're at 12. I don't think I kill them in 1 swing. But they only hit me for 7 on the crackback, so I guess I can at least try. I'll still have a 3/5 blocker up. Alright, I played too many lands there. I should have discarded 1 to a Boundary Lands Ranger. But this looks pretty good to me. Alright, yeah, so we don't kill them. If I could bargain this without casting it, we would have had lethal. If they blocked like that. But I suppose they probably could have blocked a little differently, stopped a little more damage. Didn't pay attention to the math there, but we did it. We did the thing. That was our 3rd game of the event. Our first game with our Jund pile, and we got to do the Defense of the Heart thing. It wasn't looking like it. Looked like we were just going to be red-black aggro to start that game off, but we drew into the Defense of the Heart and then drew into the green source. So sometimes you just get to do it all. And that was a very fun Midweek Magic event. Some nice practice for the format. Let's see what our mystery cosmetic is. Probably a Parallax card style, and indeed it is a Parallax card style for Flick a Coin. The mystery cosmetic, I'm pretty sure, is just equal chances of any random cosmetic on Arena, but there are like 300 parallax card styles in each set because there's one for basically every single card. So the vast majority of the time, just because of the pure quantity of these parallax card styles, that's going to be your mystery cosmetic reward. So always excited to get a sleeve or an avatar or something, but most of the time, just something like a Flick a Coin card style. So that was a super fun Midweek Magic event. Here's another look at the Jund pile. I changed it a little bit around from what I did the first time because our red stuff is so good at being aggressive. I went for triple veteran instead of the 1-of veteran, cut 2 prophetic prism to do that basically. That way we still just use our more aggressive cards like Scarecrow Guide that are creatures on curve to try to fix for the green mana, instead of cards that don't impact the board in terms of attacks and blocks, so we can still get the advantage of playing all of our aggressive red creatures on curve well, so that we are more Rakdos aggro, splash in Defense of the Heart than a grindier kind of deck here. So little change there if you wanted to look at the final build of that Jund deck, but overall, an excellent run, just an excellent sealed pool in general, with some really powerful stuff all around, and we got to play with all our powerful stuff. I guess we didn't get to play our Archon out of white, but we got to play all our best red and white spells outside of that, and a lot of our best black spells and green spells too. So very fun event, but that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in seeing more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more on your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, I am live every Wednesday at the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.